big crowd out the front of the Japanese consulate. Thank you, Ecopella, for the first song for both of them, but the first one being such a beautiful acknowledgement of country. I too, of course, acknowledge that we are here on Gadigal land, and our First Nations people have, of course, been left with such an horrific toxic legacy of so many. Just recently, of course, down the south coast with that terrible firefighting poison that has poisoned generations down there. I have actually just come back 2 weeks ago. I'm a Greens MP, by the way, in the New South Wales State Upper House. And I've just come back from South Korea. We had a big conference there for the Greens globally. So we have Green parties in countries, many countries. We have Green parties in South Korea as well as Japan. So when I was there, it was wonderful. We met for a couple of days, and there were hundreds of members of parliament, local councillors, members from Green parties around the world. One of the things that we discussed was Fukushima and the plan by TEPCO, supported by the Japanese government, to dump this 1.3 billion tonnes of contaminated water into the Pacific Ocean. So I have in the past, I dive, so I've been chair of Sea Shepherd. I love the ocean, I love whales and dolphins, and of course all the fish. It is just absolutely unfathomable that, like any government, can say yes to a company to dispose of so much contaminated waste, indeed any contaminated waste, but at least 1.3 billion tonnes. I think I've got that right. Yes. Million. Okay, thank you. 1.3 billion. Yes, million. Thank you. Tons. It's still that's still a lot of tonnes of contaminated water. So just last week in the New South Wales Parliament, I gave notice. I read out a motion calling for the government to do something, and I thought I would read that out because it summarises the information. And this is what was read out to the New South Wales Upper House last week, and I hope to be able to bring it on for debate, and I hope to be able to get support for it. And I'm sorry, in terms of translation, it's going to be tricky at the end. So that I give notice that on the next sitting day, I will move that this House notes that the Japanese government is planning to allow the Tokyo Electric Power Company, or TEPCO, to release 1.3 million tonnes of radioactive contaminated water from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station imminently. B, contaminated water from the Fukushima meltdown that occurred after the nuclear power station was struck by the catastrophic tsunami which hit Japan on the 11th of March 2011 is currently being stored in 1,000 tanks across the facility. C, an underwater tunnel is being constructed to divert the contaminated water into the ocean, which will take 7 months to reach Korea and China, and a maximum of 3 years to reach the Pacific Ocean and be discharged over a time period of between 30 and 40 years. D, the radioactive water is being treated by a technology called Advanced Liquid Processing System that TEPCO claims filters out 62 different radioactive particles, but not tritium, because tritium is difficult and expensive to separate from water. E, TEPCO has been caught misleading the public multiple times about the radioactive legacy of its Fukushima plant, and its own data confirms that the ALPS treated water at Fukushima contains multiple radionuclides, including strontium-90, iodine-129, carbon-14, and plutonium isotopes, as well as high concentrations of tritium. F. United Nations experts have voiced their concerns to the Japanese government about the potential threats to human health and the environment of releasing this contaminated water into the ocean. G. Scientists warn that the tritium in the water organically binds to other molecules, moving up the food chain, affecting plants and fish and humans, and that radioactive hazards of tritium have been underestimated and could pose risks to humans and the environment for over 100 years. H. Since March 2020, resolutions have been adopted by municipalities in Japan expressing their concerns and opposition to the release of the contaminated water. And in June 2020, the National Federation of Fisheries Cooperative Associations and the Fukushima Prefectural Federation of Fisheries Cooperative Associations passed special resolutions to firmly oppose oceanic discharges as a method for disposing of treated water. And there is a candlelight action on the 1st of July at 2 p.m. outside the Consulate General of Japan in Sydney to protest the actions of TEPCO and the Japanese government. 2, that this House calls on the Japanese government to prevent the release of contaminated water into the Pacific Ocean and to work with international experts to urgently find an alternative solution to treating this contaminated nuclear waste that protects human health and the environment. So that was read out before the Parliament. So it is my aim that we get to debate this motion. And I'll tell you a very quick story about the Greens and then I'm done. So the Green Party in Japan actually formed after Fukushima. So they formed in 2012. They have been trying to build a movement in Japan for denuclearization. We know very recently, unfortunately, there has been a renewed push for nuclear power in Japan, extending nuclear power to 60 years' time. This is what is going on right now. So the Greens in Japan, we've got a lot of, a reasonable number of councillors in prefectures. It's a very difficult politically to get elected into the federal parliament because you need deposits of something like $500,000 to run as a candidate. So people who are concerned about this, who want to change the politics in Japan, are very much up against it. So our message is, it's so important for us here in Australia to support our friends in Japan, our friends in South Korea, and we have to stop the Japanese government doing this. So we need to place as much pressure as we can on the state government as well as the federal Australian government to exercise what it can in terms of its diplomatic and foreign dialogue and assistance and duties, and go to the Japanese government urging them to prevent this discharge that will have absolutely untold, unknown impacts well into the future on not just Japan, but on South Korea, China, and many, of course, Pacific neighbours. So we stand with you. Thank you for coming out today. Thanks for inviting me. It will be at long 5, but we'll do this. Thank you.